Good morning, Europe. It's Thursday, the 7th of June. Our top stories for you. No warning. Anger mounts in Guatemala over allegations that volcano warnings were ignored. Plus, over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
We speak to a doctor working in one of the shelters full of families with nowhere else to go.
Growing discontent, fury over economic hardships continue to spill onto Jordan's streets. Protesters say they're staying put. Saving lives after the worst migrants disaster in years. Our correspondent joins Médecins Sans Frontières on a rescue mission. And international debut. As Italy's new prime minister prepares to meet world leaders in Canada, we hit the road again in Italy. Our correspondents Brian and Elena look at why immigration has become such a divisive issue. Thank you for starting your day with us. Our top story: after days of grief and heartbreak in Guatemala, there's now growing outrage following a devastating volcanic eruption. Opposition politicians are calling for the head of the Emergency Response Agency to be fired for allegedly ignoring warnings about the eruption of Fuego. At least 99 people are now known to have died, and authorities warn the volcano is showing more signs of activity. NBC News' Gabe Gutierrez sent this report from the disaster zone.
By all accounts, it is a ghost town. From the air, El Rodeo, Guatemala seems haunting, a mass grave of ash and rock. But for Hugo Lopez, it was home. The home he left behind to go to work on Sunday. The home where he last saw his wife and kids before the volcano erupted. I apologize to the authorities for coming back so soon, he says, but I was desperate. Remarkably, he tells us 46 of his extended family members are missing. Here, you truly get a sense of the overwhelming magnitude of this disaster. Rock, ash, and mud as far as the eye can see. We're walking through what used to be homes. Now, this country is mourning an incredible loss. Rescuers pulled more bodies from the rubble. There's a threat of more explosions, even as the scope of the devastation becomes clearer. Before the eruption, this luxury resort boasted of stunning views of the so-called volcano of fire. Now it is covered in a thick blanket of ash. All of its guests managed to evacuate. We met Jose Roldan, who found this dog but was still looking for his pregnant cousin. He says she was due to give birth next week. Tonight, she's among the almost 200 people unaccounted for in ghost towns that are still unreachable. Several patients are now being flown to the U.S. to be treated for severe burns. The workers here say they will continue to search for bodies, but they don't know for how long. Our social media news team have been in touch with people working on the ground in Guatemala. For more on that, let's head over to the Cube where Alex is waiting. Alex.
Absolutely, Tessa. Now, as we've been seeing, the devastation caused by that eruption has forced thousands of people to flee from their homes, and it has left families with nowhere else to go. Now, those families, a lot of them need medical attention because the amount of ash and material in the air, even if you're not directly in the path of the volcano's eruption, you'll be breathing a lot of that in. A lot of people needing medical attention. We spoke to a doctor on the ground who says he's helping in a shelter where there are 600 people currently sheltering. Let's just bring up his video. He sent us this yesterday, just explaining how his team reacted to the disaster.
We received a lot of support from a lot of international and national organizations, so the response has been great. There's still a lot of need for all these people. They're going to have to spend a couple of weeks, at least maybe some months at the shelters because they have nowhere else to go. A lot of them lost a lot of lives of the relatives, but we're doing the best we can to help them out.
Doing the best they can to help them out. That is a sense that the people on the ground, the rescue workers, are doing all they can. That's Dr. Pedro Ayahu there. Now, there is anger, however, growing anger that for those families and those people affected, there is no long-term solution being presented by the government. So while you have doctors and rescue workers working around the clock, volunteering themselves in these shelters, as we just heard from Pedro there is anger from other people that there is no long-term credible solution in their eyes from the authorities, Tessa.
All right, thank you for keeping an eye on this story, Alex and the Cube team. To Jordan now. Despite attempts to diffuse growing anger, hundreds of protesters were on the streets again last night. A government plan to raise taxes has sparked the largest protest in that country in years. Euronews journalist Evelyn Laverick reports.
Another anti-government protest has gone on late into the night in the Jordanian capital. It followed a day of strikes against the government's austerity program and a planned tax reform. There's also anger over a political and economic system widely seen as corrupt and elitist. King Abdullah has already replaced his prime minister, but is it enough? The only thing that's happened is the government's been dismissed. This is only 10% of our demands. We still have many more that have not been fulfilled. Even if the new government comes in, it means nothing. We will stay on the streets until all our demands are met. Earlier, professional associations with about 500,000 members had staged a day's strike. They want the new tax reform, which they say will raise taxes on the poor and middle class, to be scrapped. Jordan's King Abdullah, who is normally seen as a unifying force in the country, is relying on his appointment of reformer Omar Razaz as Prime Minister to defuse the protests. Evelyn Laverick, Euronews.
A landmark ruling could be handed down today over abortion in Northern Ireland. The UK's highest court will decide whether abortion laws there are incompatible with human rights legislation. Well, contrary to the rest of the UK, a termination is only legal in Northern Ireland if a woman's life is at risk or if there's a danger of serious mental or physical health problems. Our correspondent Vincent McAvenny is covering the case from London. Vincent, this verdict comes weeks after the Republic of Ireland voted to overhaul its abortion law. But this case has been going on way before that, hasn't it?
Good morning, Tessa. That's right. This case started long before that vote. It's been working its way through the UK court system for a number of years and will finally reach the Supreme Court today, where we will have a verdict. Now, two of the parties in that case, Gráinne Teggett from Amnesty Northern Ireland and Sarah Hewitt, a woman in Northern Ireland who had to travel to the UK to here in London to have a termination because she had a fatal fetal abnormality. They are parties in this case. I'll be speaking to them later, but I'm joined now by another one of the parties in this case, Catherine O'Brien, who is the head of policy at BPAS. Catherine, what's the argument in this case today?
So today's case that's been brought by the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission and supported by a group of incredibly brave women who've been deeply affected by Northern Ireland's abortion ban are challenging that law on the basis that pregnancy resulting from rape or incest or a pregnancy with a fatal fetal anomaly, the ban on abortion in these cases, it's a breach of their human rights.
And how likely do you think you are to be successful here at the Supreme Court, and what happens if you're not?
Well, while I can't guess what the verdict's going to be today, I firmly believe that the activity we've seen in Parliament today from MPs across all sides of the House means that the current government position that this is a matter devolved to the Northern Ireland Assembly is untenable, and that we will see change to the law in Northern Ireland soon.
And what is likely to happen in Parliament if this case isn't successful?
I believe that MPs are quite clear that they've had enough of Northern Ireland breaching women's human rights. Regardless of the case today, I think MPs will take action soon.
Catherine, thank you very much. Tessa, I'll be keeping an eye on the verdict here. Back to you now.
Thank you, Vincent McAvenny there, and Catherine O'Brien. Thank you. Well, days before a historic summit, U.S. President Trump's lawyer is defending comments he made about the leader of North Korea. Speaking at a conference in Israel, Rudy Giuliani says Kim Jong-un begged Trump on, quote, hands and knees for the U.S. to reinstate the meeting. Well, the comments have been criticized as potentially damaging and undiplomatic. Giuliani says it was simply a metaphor and that his views do not reflect the views of the administration. Iran's plan to boost its uranium enrichment capacity has prompted a warning from France. It says Tehran is close to a, quote, red line, but that so far Iran is not in violation of a 2015 nuclear accord. Tensions between Iran and the West have been heightened since U.S. President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the deal. Spain's new prime minister has unveiled his new cabinet, and for the first time in the country's history, the majority of the ministers are women. When describing the cabinet, Pedro Sanchez called it, quote, pro-gender equality, cross-generational, open to the world, but anchored in the EU. Tunisia's interior minister has been fired following the worst migrant boat accident in recent years. At least 68 people died and dozens are still missing after a boat packed with around 180 migrants sank off Tunisia's coast on Sunday. The United Nations say the death toll will likely rise to over 100. Most people on board were Tunisians trying to escape unemployment and an economic crisis in the country. Since the start of this year, almost 650 people have lost their lives in the Mediterranean Sea. Euronews reporter Annelise Borges is in the Italian port town of Catania in Sicily, where she is about to join a Médecins Sans Frontières rescue mission in the Mediterranean. Annelise, tell us more about this mission that you're joining.
Well, MSF also, alongside other NGOs such as Save the Children and Sea-Watch, have been conducting operations like this one for the past 3 years. And it follows a decision by the EU to replace its search and rescue operation called Mare Nostrum with Triton, an operation mainly focused on protecting EU borders and not rescuing people from the sea. Since that decision was made in 2014, thousands of people have died while attempting this dangerous crossing of the Mediterranean from North Africa here to the southern part of Europe. But these missions are, of course, extremely controversial in the eyes of the EU. Certain EU member states believe that they are actually working as pull factor, and they are inciting even more people to risk their lives while attempting this crossing. The idea here with MSF is that we're going to be following them on a 3-week deployment off the coast of Tunisia and Libya to monitor the waters and to see if we come across any migrant boat in distress. The idea is then to make contact with this boat and try at least to bring these migrants to safety.
All right, thank you for that, Annelise Borges, who's about to board a rescue mission by the MSF. Thank you. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, the new Italian Prime Minister Conte starts his first day in office by heading to Canada for the G7. And we're also on the road on our All Voices road trip in Italy, talking about why immigration has become so divisive. Plus, over in the Cube, our social media news desk.
We'll have more on the plastic that's polluting Earth's last great wilderness. But first, let's have a look at your weather.
You're watching Good Morning Europe. Our top story: at least 99 people are now known to have died since Sunday's volcanic eruption in Guatemala. And authorities warn the volcano is showing further signs of activity. This while Guatemalan opposition politicians are calling for the head of the Conred Emergency Response Agency to be fired, saying he ignored advance warnings about the eruption of the Fuego volcano. Now, traces of plastic waste have been found in the remotest Antarctic waters. And this is just showing us the scale of plastic waste pollution. Alex, what is going on here?
Absolutely, Tessa. We often think, when we think of Antarctica, you're perhaps the furthest you could be from civilization. It is called Earth's last great wilderness for a reason. But an expedition by Greenpeace, a 3-month expedition testing the waters and the snow, found some rather alarming things. Take a look at this. This is the team analysing snow in Antarctica. So what they did as part of this, they're just taking scoops of the snow, they put them in jars, and they then returned these samples to London. This was in addition to scooping through the waters off the coast. And what they were finding in the waters and in the snow were traces both of hazardous chemicals, but quite astonishingly small microplastics. Now, these are the most remote waters on Earth off the coast of Antarctica. Microplastics, so rather than just thinking of plastic bags or full bottles floating around the oceans, microplastics are small plastic fibres. When these bags and things start to break down, it's these small traces that are filling the water. So a lot of what they're doing when they're testing for chemicals and these things, they're not looking for the things you and I might spot as litter, but it's rather the fact that these waste chemicals, these waste materials are making their way into all these marine habitats. Sometimes you won't even notice it with the naked eye. I just want to bring up one tweet which perhaps sums this up, how people are responding to this. It's from Andrea, who basically saw this announcement today that Earth's last great wilderness is filling with plastic and our waste, and she's saying, right, that's it. From now on, I'm saying no to plastic wherever I can. And she says it here because it is a choice. So the emphasis from stories like this on social, people are saying, come on, let's make a choice to ditch plastic. What are your thoughts on this and anything we're talking about today? You can use #TheCube to let us know.
Indeed, that would be tragic if we lose that. Thank you for that, Alex. Now, after 3 months of political deadlock, the populists are now officially in charge in Italy. The coalition government of Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte comfortably won its second confidence vote in Parliament on Wednesday. And today he'll be putting the final touches to his cabinet, which brings together the far-right League and the anti-establishment Five-Star Movement. Their joint program features tax cuts, increased welfare spending, and a crackdown on immigration. The stage is set for tough talks between Italy and the EU. And Prime Minister Conte will be heading to Canada later today for a G7 summit with the world's most powerful leaders. I'm joined by our Euronews journalist, Alistair Sanford. Alistair, this is Conte's international debut, as we can call it. What image of Italy is he trying to project?
Well, if you take Conte's words at face value, he's already said that he's proud to represent this populist government and that he's not going to toe the EU line, for instance, on the budget. This government has the audacity to bring in new economic policies, he said yesterday in the Parliament, and certainly at the G7 he's got an immediate opportunity to make his presence felt on the world stage. He also said in Parliament the first task for Italy will be to make itself known, the second will be to be respected. So specifically, what can we expect? Well, the opposition has accused him of being vague, but he has vowed to implement the coalition programme of the Five-Star and the League. There was some reassurance for markets on spending. He said, yes, we do want to boost growth, but we're looking for a gradual reduction of debt. However, investors are worried that Italy's finances could be jeopardised. They do want to. Italy's bonds came under pressure yesterday on the markets. Watch for some signs of internal tensions, though, because, yes, they want to boost spending, but on what? We know that the Five-Star prioritise the environment, whereas the League are more interested in industry. I think as far as the EU's concerned, and maybe at the G7 already, he may want to tackle the EU on migration policy. Italy, of course, has borne the brunt of all the arrivals coming across the Mediterranean. And he said yesterday it's pointless asking for more Europe if we're left alone. So there are signs there, perhaps he's looking for a bit of give and take, looking for some signs of solidarity from the EU on that issue.
Indeed, it'll be interesting to watch him on the world stage. Thank you for that, Alistair Sanford. Meanwhile, our correspondents Elena Cavallone and Brian Carter continue their road trip across a divided Italy. Well, they started in the south talking to supporters of the Five-Star movement, and now they're heading north, where the anti-immigrant League Party is especially popular. Here's their latest report.
Where are we going now?
We are going to Macerata, where the League has scored the highest record in years.
How come?
Well, there were a lot of problems before with drug trafficking, and people think that the flux of migrants coming in recent months is getting the situation worse.
Macerata is a historical city of about 40,000 people that used to be a bastion of the left. In 2013, less than 1% of the people here voted for the League. But in the last elections, the far-right party scored 1/5 of the votes. Many here say it's because of the sudden arrival of migrants. In the town's market square, opinions are polarized.
Who did you vote for?
The League.
Why?
Because I was a hardcore socialist before I got fed up.
We have to respect other people's lives and not judge them because of their colour. They say migrants come here to do nothing, but we have to understand their problems without judging them. In fact, I hate Salvini. I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
At the moment, I'm looking for a room because I need to sleep, but people tell me they don't want to rent out to people of colour.
Paolo Bernabucci heads an NGO that helps migrants integrate. He says he witnessed the rise of prejudice against African migrants in recent years.
The toughest job is to give psychological support to these people, because a lot of young men that are with us are scared. They've realized that the fact that they are black poses a bigger risk of being hit, not only by trainees' bullets, but by the wider context.
A reference to a recent drive-by shooting against migrants by a League activist that didn't kill anyone but shocked the nation. In Macerata, the far-right can sometimes take a surprising face. Meet League activist Paolo Diop, whose family immigrated to Italy from Senegal in the 1980s.
Of course, I have crossed the border legally, because at that time you only needed a visa and the borders were quite easy to cross. I entered politics, and now I'm dealing with migration especially, because I think no one can understand some problems and mechanisms better than a person who has experienced it. I think solidarity must be based on strong things. I mean, that we can't guarantee solidarity with everyone just because we're good people. We have to make sure it's constructive.
Where are we going next?
We are going to Milan in Lombardia. It's the birthplace of the League, and over there the demand for more autonomy from Rome is very strong. But we are going to meet also other people that still rely on traditional parties.
All right, we'll be hearing more from Brian tomorrow about his trip to Italy. And still to come for you on Good Morning Europe, you won't want to miss this. There's a death sentence for an escaped cow because he broke EU immigration laws. Do stay with us for that. But first, the weather. You're watching Good Morning Europe. Welcome back. Now, this next story, you can't make this up. A cow that went on an illegal stroll from Bulgaria to Serbia is now facing the death sentence. Alex, what is this?
Absolutely. Tessa, if I can pull this up here, this is Penka the cow. Penka the cow strolled over the border into non-EU Serbia and then strolled back. Should be as simple as that, you'd think. Unfortunately not. Due to the strict rules on moving livestock across the borders, officials now want Penka to be put down. Bulgarian officials say Penka, unfortunately, she's got to die. People online, that has set off a lot of debate. There's even this hashtag here, Save Penka. People saying, oh, come on, let the poor animal survive. She's already back with her owner, and there's a petition started by this chap here. He's a Telegraph journalist. He's tracked down Penka. He's a Brexit journalist for the Telegraph, and he's pointing out, saying, come on, EU, surely you've got more compassion, more leniency than this. It's dividing a lot of people's opinions. A lot of people saying, save Penka. Other people saying, come on, a rule's a rule. What do you think? Let us know using hashtag #TheCube.
Can Penka be saved? Thank you for that, Alex. Thanks. And thank you for joining us on Good Morning Europe. Do stay with Euronews for much more, and we'll leave you with today's no comment and pictures from those latest protests in Jordan.